Have you ever thought you were completely alone in your home, only to discover someone was secretly watching you? This is a true story about how a man discovered his roommate was hiding under his bed, and what happened next will chill you to your core. It was a regular Thursday night. This guy, let's call him Mike, was getting ready for bed. He'd been living in a shared apartment for a few months, with a roommate he found online, so at first everything seemed fine. The roommate was polite, kept to himself, and even helped with chores. But over time, Mike started noticing little things. Food would go missing, even when he was sure he hadn't eaten it. His belongings were slightly moved, and some nights he'd hear faint creaking noises, like footsteps, even when he thought his roommate was asleep. He shrugged it off, thinking, maybe I'm just imagining things. One night, around 2:30 a.m., Mike woke up to a faint shuffling sound coming from his bedroom. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to jolt him awake. He stayed still, straining to listen. The sound was coming from under his bed. At first, Mike thought it must be a rat or some other pest. He grabbed his phone, turned on the flashlight, and leaned over the edge of the bed. But what he saw made his blood run cold. There, under the bed, was his roommate. His wide, bloodshot eyes stared back at Mike, unblinking. He wasn't moving, just lying there, curled up in the darkness. "What are you doing under my bed?" Mike yelled, backing away in shock. The roommate slowly crawled out, his face emotionless, but his hands trembling. I was just watching," he said in a low voice. Mike couldn't believe what he was hearing. His heart was pounding so hard, he could barely think straight. "Watching me? What are you talking about?" he demanded. The roommate sat on the floor, avoiding eye contact. He admitted that for weeks he had been sneaking into Mike's room at night to feel closer to him. He had been hiding under the bed, sometimes for hours, while Mike slept. At this point, Mike felt a mix of terror and anger. He grabbed his phone and threatened to call the police. The roommate begged him not to, saying it was a misunderstanding and that he meant no harm, but Mike wasn't taking any chances. He locked himself in the bathroom, called the police, and waited until they arrived. When the police arrived, they escorted the roommate out of the apartment. It turned out he had a history of erratic behavior, and his previous roommates had reported similar incidents. Mike packed his belongings that same night and left the apartment for good. He shared his story online to warn others about the dangers of trusting strangers too easily. To this day, Mike says he can't sleep in a room without thoroughly checking under the bed first. The experience left him shaken, but it also taught him a valuable lesson. You never really know who you're living with.